first steps here to create a different type of jacket out of this short-sleeved, cropped red sweatshirt and utilizing some jeans. First thing I did was to find the center front and the center back by matching up the shoulder seams, and the same thing at the bottom by matching the side seams. Now I'm going to cut off the ribbing at the bottom and at the top. There's a seam right here in the ribbing at the side, so I'll start by cutting up through that. Since this is a shorter sweatshirt, I'm just going to be cutting off this lower ribbing, and it seems to work just to go right close to where it's been attached to the sweatshirt. Leaving a bit more seam allowance as I'm cutting off the ribbing at the neckline. And by the way, this is an Amazon Essentials extra large. It was definitely cropped in the body length and the sleeves. Made in Vietnam, 60% cotton, 40% polyester. Red, so you can bet your booties I washed it on hot and dried it to get any of that red dye out of this sweatshirt. So I've cut off the neck ribbing and the lower ribbing. Am I going to cut off the sleeves? Not really sure. I've got some plans. So if in doubt, don't do it. And I am now going to cut it apart at the center front. It appears I need to go press that line in a little bit more securely, but then I will slash right up the center front. Remembering back to the days when all I was doing was upcycling sweatshirts into stylish jackets, I know at the time some people would put a strip of fusible interfacing down the center front and then cut through that, thereby stabilizing it. But I have found that it doesn't stretch out that much. I will be stabilizing it, but the deal is I'm not sure if I want to do that on the wrong side or the right side. So I'm going to hold off on that for just a minute and handle it gently. You can always stay stitch, but this is lengthwise grain. Chances are it's not going to stretch out of shape. I am going to be doing some stay stitching, so I'm over here at my machine station, and I wondered what kind of needle I have in my machine. And since I use only Schmetz needles, I can pull this out, and let me see if I can show you this. I can easily see that the top color band on the needle is a purple color, and the bottom band is aqua. So looking at my chart, that means that this is a Microtex size 90. So here on this wonderful My Pad that I use and sell at my website, londa-sewing.com, I'm going to put it in that slot. I just change my needles frequently. I do not hesitate to pitch them when I know they've been used enough. And when I do that, I put them in this prescription bottle. I have an entire YouTube all about proper selection and care of sewing machine needles. The most popular, the most important part of any sewing machine, regardless of how much you pay for it. Since this is a sweatshirt and denim, I am going to choose a stretch needle because the body is a knit and a heavier knit, so I'm going to use the 90. But when I get going through just the denim part, I'll come over here perhaps and select one of the jeans denim needles that has a sharper point on it. Sometimes you're going through both a knit and a woven, so you just have to make a decision which is best for that situation. But I always keep my ears peeled as to listening for thuds or pulls. If you hear a real thud, then you need to change your needle. I'm using what's called a stacked or parallel wound spool. So I am putting it on the vertical spool pin rather than the horizontal spool pin. It just really is better feed. If you put a stacked spool on a horizontal, it puts another twist in the thread. I learned that from the gentleman who really knows all about thread. I forget his name right now, but he runs Superior Threads. And I put the catch on the spool down so that it doesn't get caught on that. And to even help, I believe I will put on this spool cap to bring the thread out away from the roughness of this spool. Necklines are curves and for sure will stretch out. So before I get going at all, before I lay this on my dress form, I am going to stay stitch around the neck edge. And while I'm at it, I will go down both center fronts. I'll use a stitch length of 3, and which is normal for me for knits, and a seam allowance of 1/4 inch, just running the edge of the fabric along the side of my presser foot. And as I'm doing this stitching, believe me, I'm not stretching it. If anything, I'm kind of coaxing the neckline fabric into the needle. I do not want it to stretch out. Here, when I get to the shoulder seam, I'm making sure to have it go the same direction that it's going at the armhole. I absolutely positively cannot make all design decisions at one time. At this point, I know that I want to make use of the waistband, and I'm going to cut it right close under here. These rivets would cause a real problem trying to sew close to them. You can see that. And as I've done in the past, I like these belt loops, so I'll loosen it up here as I cut it off. The other thing is I have come and found my container full of jean stitch thread. This is a product from YLI that's a nice heavy thread. I need to go look it up. I know my supplier doesn't carry it any longer. I know you can get it directly from YLI, which I would highly recommend. I think we need to give the small guys our business, and I highly recommend that thread. It matches very closely the color of the jeans stitching on your regular jeans, topaz gold type jeans. Sometimes you find jeans with white stitching, and so that's why I have the white thread as well. As I'm ripping off the belt loops from the jeans side, it occurs to me that one could cut this off about in here, giving yourself room with a zipper foot that you could stitch this down fairly close. Just another option. You can cut through a metal zipper very carefully with an old pair of scissors. I might do that just to give me the option. Well, look at that. The length of that waistband on these Gloria Vanderbilt jeans is almost perfect length to go all around this neckline. It's a little bit shorter, but I could definitely pull this stay stitching thread up to make it fit. And I did cut it off with some seam allowance, which I'm glad now that I did, so that I could come in here and stitch this from the inside, then maybe top stitch it from the outside. Don't know. Not sure what's going to happen at the center front. Now my design thinking has to go on to the center fronts. I did rip off the back pockets, and they are a nice size for a cell phone, so I believe I'm going to put each of those right here on the sides. And if I keep the attention at the neck and vertical and the patch pockets, I think I might just turn under a little hem at the bottom and call it done. Sometimes simple is great. I do also have this idea that I found with stars with frayed edges, but I don't think so. Not on this. If in doubt, leave it out. I used the bottom of these jeans for something else. I believe they ended up in that denim patched sundress. I like the kind of puckered look of the side seam here down the center front, so I believe that's what I'm going to do. I love, 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 and have used miles of this straight fusible stay tape from So Keezy. I sell it, and I just highly recommend this one, the woven stay tape. And then they also have, and I carry a 1-inch wide knit fusible stay tape. See next how I use it. I put the fusible stay tape on the hem allowance. In this case, I'm working on the hem, so it's going on the hem allowance. And you'll see as I proceed here why I put it on the hem allowance. So after fusing, then you turn the hem up and press it into place. You're pressing right along that innermost edge of the fusible stay tape. I want to do a second row of stitching here, but I do not want it placed where the needle would be right now because that would divide this area in half. I want it to be closer to this row of stitching. Now I could have used a twin needle, but I just didn't. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to make use of needle position. And even though I have a big fancy machine, here the needle is in center position. If I press the minus, you will see the needle hop over to the left, okay? And that's what I want. What I'm going to do is keep my eye glued this side of the presser foot along this row of stitching. And now can you see where the needle's going to stitch? Let me see if I can hold this and actually stitch at the same time. Yes. All right, seems like I can do this successfully, one-handed, but I'm not going to do it for long, just long enough to show you what it's going to look like. Do you see it back here? And I like that better than if the second row were centered. It's just me, but needle position is the width button on your sewing machine, however you have that. It could even be a knob at the top. But play with that on straight stitch, play with your width button and see if that moves your needle. I do have a complete YouTube video on making use of that capability at your sewing machine, but it's wonderful. You want to be a guide watcher, not a needle watcher. So if you can move your needle and watch a guide, that's a beautiful thing. Instead of doing all of what I just told you, remember I did mention, well, I could have used a twin needle. And the one I would have used would have been this twin stretch needle, because I'm on a knit, 4.0/75. So it's needles that are 4 millimeters apart. They also have one that's 2.5 millimeters apart. The confusing thing, and let me explain it, I always taught and kept my needles separated because the blue bar meant that it was a stretch needle, so the point was somewhat rounded, and the red was a universal twin needle. Well, for a time during COVID, it was explained to me that the factory in Germany where these are made couldn't get the blue dyes, so for a while now we have some of the twin stretch needles with the red bar. So you just need to keep them in the package in which they came so you know if you've got the stretch needle or the universal. And if you want to know more about stitching with twin needles, I have a full video on that at my YouTube channel. So go check it out at YouTube. And this is the next step, and you must hold the fabric this way so that you can see the garment side. And what I'm doing is very carefully trimming close to that stitching. I can't really cut holding the phone as well, but you can see here how you can neaten up that edge and have it look like this instead of like that. This is a chain stitch. Some sergers have it. Most cover hem machines have it. If you have a 5-thread serger, it has this stitch. This is what's used to go up the center back seam of men's pants because that seam is altered so quickly. It's also on potato sacks, feed sacks. But if you get hold of the right thread, look what it does. It just pulls right out. Now it's either going to do it from one end or the other. I initially on this pocket tried to get it from this end and it just seemed to pull the knot tighter. So you just have to work out a little bit, loosening a couple threads, but this is a great thing, a great sound, and there it goes. And then the other side simply lifts off. Now, there's also on this seam ripper, and I'll find it and put a link to it in the description. This is called Seam Fix. I've got threads here that I want to get out, because when I reattach these pockets onto my sweatshirt upcycle project, I'm going to be using jean stitch thread in topaz gold from Superior Threads, and it will look like this, but I just want it to look fresh and new and pretty. So this rubbery end really helps get those threads out nice and quick and easy. So there's a couple of hints on ripping for you this morning. Here's where I am today. We have the pockets free from any stitching, and I believe this is just going to be a totally symmetrical, balanced garment, which is kind of odd for me. I like collars that frame the face. So at this point, the decision is, do I cut a larger neckline so that the collar stands up and away from the face like this? I think that's what I'm going to go with. Then the decision is, do I stitch it the right side to the right side like this? Or do I stitch the collar to the outside of the jacket right along this edge and then let this fur? And that's what I'm tending towards. Then if I cut it vertically like this, it will really kind of fur up, and I could even add more strips of furriness to it. And if I did that, it could look like this. And I could even do some hand stitching around there. This was a pair of my jeans that I had taken the hem out and then added several strips to it where they were all slashed horizontally, perpendicular to the stitching, and then through washing they just achieved this really fun border of furriness. I have a blog post on that I will put the link into also in this video. You can also see I did the same type of thing on this neckline. You can see it from the inside here too. I put the jean stuff, the waistband, to the outside and then added the fur. This happened to be a different kind of fur. This is bias cut. So that's my plan and kind of an overall look. I'm glad I came over here because I think I really like the chain stitching. Maybe I could even do that chain stitching to attach the pockets. You can see on this one, I emphasize the Calvin Klein swirl. Yeah, I think that's my direction. And I love hand stitching. So back to work. Here are the remaining parts of this pair of jeans that I had used the bottom legs for something else. Obviously the waistband became this collar, and now I am going to cut up the sides in order to create the front finish on this jacket. I've done a simple double stitched hem, and then the only other thing that I haven't made any decisions about would be around the sleeves. I do not operate in the realm that I have to plan everything. I make one or two decisions, execute, and then come back and see, with it looking as it does at that point, what else I feel like it needs. That's how I do it. That I need to allow a 1 1/4 inch seam allowance from this chain stitching over. This drives me absolutely berserk when I'm wearing jeans. If the side seam allowance changes direction. With these rivets up here in the pocket area, it's going this way, but then it wants to fall this way for the rest of the length. And I was not sure I wanted to deal with this rivet and this stuff on it anyway. So if I hold this up, hip, hip, hooray, my shorter length is going to require just almost the perfect amount of length to right here. So I'm going to be able to cut these strips across here and not deal with all of this. Here's what I've decided. With this 1 1/4 inch seam allowance, if I take a healthy like 3/8 of an inch seam, then what's going to happen is this seam allowance, this is going to bind the edge, and within, so that, do you see we've got denim on the back side? I didn't want to have my front look like this with that seam right on the edge. Instead, I'm having this finished edge actually be the finished edge of the front, or at least the sweatshirting is stuffing it here, and then I'll stitch it down, and then I've yet to decide what I'm going to do here. I might turn it under because maybe I just want to have the fringing at the top and maybe the sleeves. I believe that's probably the direction I'll go. My brain's getting on the older side, so when I make a decision that I have to repeat, I'm going to go ahead and cut. So I cut the 1 1/4 inch seam allowance here, and I've got it pinned on to the wrong side, just like I do this one. Now I'm going to go next and stabilize with straight fusible stay tape along here, and I'm going to do it on this outside rather than on the inside, because I don't want to see it on the inside. So I'm going to put stabilizer here and then do the stitching. Now then, I've got the front stabilized, and how I did that was I put it on, stabilizer on one. This is straight fusible stay tape from Soak Easy. And then I cut another piece the same length and put it on here. Even vertical stretches on a knit. And this tape doesn't stretch. So I have it all done, and I have things pinned here to remind me what I'm doing. All of this stabilization is also part of what I developed in my 2 books on sweatshirt transformations. This one is published by C&T, and you can purchase it via PDF on my website. There are no printed ones left. And then I also have my own published book, Creative Sweatshirt Jackets, Londa's Way Book 2. And that's at a great buy on my website right now. So if you want to do more of transforming sweatshirts into jackets, there's 9 plus, I believe, 8. So that's 17 specific directions for 17 stylish jackets made out of a sweatshirt in those 2 books. Plus I have some patterns, PDF. Next to do is to make sure that I've got exactly identical lengths of jeans that I'm going to be adding to these center fronts as we described before. I'll go stitch that and it will become clearer. Actually, it's hard for me to emphasize strongly enough that you must stabilize, and then also make sure that what you're binding the fronts with are exactly the same length. On jeans today with the Lycra threads in them, you've got stretch vertical and horizontal. And if you can look here as I'm pinning the correct length of the jean seam to the center front of the sweatshirt, if I stretched the sweatshirt to match the jeans, the front's gonna go in a bowed out curve. It's gonna just look awful. You've got to boss the stretched edges around by something that's stable, and in this case it's that straight fusible stay tape. So do you see here where the jeans looks bigger than the sweatshirt? I'm going to actually make it work. I've got a pin here, I've got a pin here. Now I'm going to put a pin in the middle, and I'm going to stitch it, pin it down, make it work. And at the very bottom, when I did the first side, I had it right level, and actually that's at the top, and then at the bottom of the other side I had like 3/8 of an inch extending. So that's what I'm doing on this side. I'm making sure again that my 2 fronts are exactly the same length long, and that they don't bow out or stretch by use of straight fusible stay tape and the technique that I just hope I explained completely. Here at the ironing board, I'm pressing this jean strip away from the center front, and I'm pressing that seam allowance towards that jeans piece. So I've done that, and then I'm going to turn it over. And here's where horizontal before vertical comes into play. I left that excess at the bottom so that I could finish it nicely. So now this horizontal is coming up, and then the vertical is going to go over. Okay, turning that edge under. And that's going to give a nice finish to the very bottom of the jacket that will look like this. So next I'm going to press this over, but this seam allowance is what's stuffing the edge. As I press it, I'm going to make sure that I've got equidistant from this seam to the fold. Having pressed this then, this is what it looks like. All right. From the top, do you see why I put this stabilizer on the outside rather than on the inside? If I had put it on the wrong side, you would see a strip of it. Ugh, icky poo. Okay, so very frequently, if I'm binding an edge, I put the straight fusible stay tape, the stay, on the right side because I'm finishing on the right side instead of the wrong side. Next, I'll need to decide if I'm going to turn this edge under and have it be a clean finish, or if I'm going to fur it up. Don't know yet. I think I've got to press both sides and put it back up on my mannequin. A block of wood is your friend. Remember this: hot forgets and cold remembers. You've got a lot of bulk here, especially down at the bottom. So, that's my favorite word, so. Get steam in it and then clap it. Hold it down. The wood absorbs the heat and steam and then becomes colder, and cold remembers. If you felt the wood here, you would see that it's moist and warm. And then you need to just let it lay for a little bit, okay? I'm gonna steam and clap this upper portion. Steam and clap. While I have things flat here on the pressing station, it's time to make some more decisions. I decided I would carefully pin and place these pockets on so that they were the same, but then I thought to myself, how am I going to attach the pockets? Do I want to do some chain stitching out of red thread, and do I still have that red thread left? Well, indeed I found it. It's this pearl cotton, and I think even though it's a little more of a cool red, it's still going to look fine with this slightly more warm undertone thread. So at that point I thought, well, maybe I just won't have the jeans gold on here at all. There'll only be red stitching. But then I remembered what the collar's going to have on it. And do I want to get rid of all that gold stitching? I think not. So my conclusion is that I'm going to only do the handwork in this red and then the machine work in the gold. Since exactly duplicating this stitch, and it's a little softer of a color than the topaz gold that I have, what I'm going to do is stitch these pockets on with monofilament so it's nice and strong with machine stitching, and then I'm going to go across here and down the centers of the pocket seaming here with a chain stitch. Therefore, I'm going to not pin the pockets on now, but look forward to a nice evening in front of the TV and something decent that we can find on perhaps Up Faith and Family. Some hand stitching with the pockets independent of the sweatshirt. You see, if I waited and put this sweatshirt on with this pocket on with the monofilament, then I'd have to do the hand stitching through 2 layers of denim plus the sweatshirt. And I really feel that the stitching will last longer if it doesn't have the abrasion of the back side on it. So now I'm forced into a decision here. Accentuating verticals always makes one look thinner. So I believe I'm going to plan and do that hand stitching along the front here as well. And if I do that, if I fringed this up to it, I'm afraid that fringe is going to curl and you'd never see the hand stitching anyway. Therefore, I do believe I have just made the decision that this is going to get pressed under, and we're going to have a clean finish up the center front. So we'll have the fur at the neck, and then maybe that fringed edge around the sleeves to connect it in and repeat it in 3 places, each sleeve plus the neck. Do you see how you make design decisions? You make them as you go along. You think, if I do this now, how's it going to work with what I have left to do? And then the same reasoning for up the center front. I'm going to do this hand stitching before I stitch this down. Therefore, all that will be left is the neckline and the sleeves. So I'm done at the machine in cutting station and pressing station work for the day. Looking forward to that hand stitching tonight, and then I can proceed. It's very hot here in Tennessee, so my air conditioner is on, and I'm sorry, I'm just not going to go turn it off, so there's some background noise. All right, so I did this hand embroidery, and now I went to start to stitch this down, and instead of doing just a straight stitch with the smoke monofilament in the needle and red thread in the bobbin, I came over here to my sewing machine, and I decided I wanted to use this stitch. So in its default, and I know that it's default because these are black, it shows that it's going to hop over to the right. Well, I want it to hop over to the left. So I'm going to press mirror image button, and now it's going to go straight to the left and hop over to the right. On almost all of these types of stitches, I find that I need to increase the length to 3. And in this case, I need it to hop over a little bit further because that denim is kind of bigger. So I've set it at 2.5. Now let's see what it does. Notice also the position of my hands. One in back and one in front, creating a taut situation. The left swing of the needle is going right alongside of the denim, and the right, and then when it jumps over, it goes into the denim. So let me show you what that looks like. And I've got needle down on. Do you see here? It looks totally invisible, so I think that's pretty cool. And the red bobbin thread makes it pretty invisible from the wrong side as well. So that's what I'm going to do. I'll take note of my settings, but when I want to come down the other side, we'll see if I need to go back to the other original configuration of the stitch. Note also that I put the pins in with the head downward so that it'd be easy to pull the pin out when I get to it and need to remove it. Down here at the bottom, this turns up, and then this turns in and goes over, so that I'm going to have a nice finished look at the bottom. I'm just going to say that in the last hour or so, I've been all over the place with this jacket, ready to throw it in the corner, but I never allow myself to do that, to a totally different plan, but I'm proceeding. The collar's not going to stand quite as much away from the face. It's going to hug the neck at the back. But since the collar is going to be laid on top, I knew I needed to finish this top edge of the sweatshirt itself because it will be visible from the inside of the jacket. I have put woolly nylon in the upper looper and red thread then in the lower looper in the needle. And this is the edge then that's going to be shown on the inside of the jacket. Knits don't ravel, but I just do feel, especially in selling my garments, that I need to have finished edges. Sometimes you have to just really push through. There are days when I come to a stopping point or a challenge and I just give up and go do some computer work or something. But today I pushed through, and I'm happy that I'm going to go ahead and finish this, perhaps today. I'll put this on the dress form, but it was just like poking out in the back, and I just don't like that look myself. So I took a 2-inch deep tuck about 1/3 of the way up, and here in the hem allowance, then you just have to get rid of that bulk. So this is what I did. I trimmed that excess out at the hem line so that we don't have all that bulk there, and now I'll need to restitch it. Here is my end upcycled jacket, starting with a sweatshirt and a pair of jeans. I added some hand chain stitch on the pockets up the center front, which is the side seams of the jeans, and then the waistline of the jeans to fit exactly around the neckline of the sweatshirt, which I cut larger. And then you can see I just cut in about every 3/8 of an inch. I did throw this in the dryer. It furred up some. It will continue to fur up more. Stop before you think you're done. Less is best. Those were the rules that I obeyed when I decided not to add any of the blue at the sleeves. This is a short jacket. There's definitely a horizontal line created around where some women carry weight, which is in the tummy. So if I had put navy at the cuffs as well, it would have only intensified that horizontal line. Right now it's got a really nice face framing neckline. And I also, in the back, nipped it in with an inverted box pleat, just to give it a little closer fit at the back. This is definitely a short cropped jacket. This would be a wonderful proportion with a long jean skirt, or maybe short jeans. Just remember never to divide yourself into 2 equal parts as you dress. Waiting for someone at londas-sewing.com or the new Tedoo site that I have found. I'll put it up there for sure. So go check out Tedoo, Tedoo. This is Londa at Londa's Creative Sewing, where I make one of a kind, always one of a kind, because you're one of a kind too.